Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, September 9th. If you are just tuning in, we've been doing a quick little skim over, honestly, of all the wild stuff that happened this weekend in football. We went through winners and losers in the NFL, and we just finished going over winners in college football. In this segment, we're going to take a look at those losers, the teams that did not do what we wanted them, the teams that came out flat, and were quite honestly very disappointing. We'll talk about all of that in just a second, but before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw it in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, September 9th. But like I was saying, we're going to get into a little bit more of the losers here for college football. I know it kind of started that segment early, and oops, I apologize. I had to get that Colorado stuff off my chest, but we're going to get into arguably the biggest loser. Maybe, not even arguably, the biggest loser of the week, Notre Dame. How does Notre Dame do this every single year? Notre Dame, we talked about Northern Illinois and their crazy comeback. That's not comeback, their crazy victory. We talked about it from one side, but now let's take a look at it from the loser's side. Notre Dame, the number 5 team in the nation, coming off of a huge win, beating number 20 at the time, Texas A&M, in a tight battle that I thought both of these teams are good. Then maybe it's just because they're riding high off this win, but this happens every year with Marcus Freeman and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They play a weak schedule, and they find a way to lose a game that they should not lose, quite honestly. Notre Dame comes in and just their offense can't go. They have no weapons. You have Riley Leonard who can run the ball, but when you go up against a solid run defense or a healthy defense or one that's keying in on the run and you can't throw the ball, you don't have the weapons to throw the ball over the top, it turns out the way you just saw it. You put up 14 points against a MAC school in Northern Illinois that honestly was not amongst the MAC contenders. They go ahead and they beat the number 5 team in the country, and I don't want to take anything away from that. I really don't, because Notre Dame's defense is nothing to scoff at, but you let them block 2 field goals. You let them block one at the end of the half, and you let them block one at the end of the game. That's incredible special teams from Northern Illinois, but awful execution by Notre Dame. They could not get anything going offensively, and that is just awful. I think Marcus Freeman is very much on the hot seat. I don't know if he'll be able to make it. Brian Kelly wasn't the greatest coach in the world, but he wasn't losing consistently to teams like Northern Illinois, right? He was getting the wins that they should, keeping them in that top 10 conversation. Now Notre Dame falls all the way back to number 18 in the poll, and I don't even have them in mind. Just a little bit of a sneak peek for you for what's going to come out tomorrow. But this is a really, really distressing sign for Notre Dame. I really don't have the words to describe how bad this is. Their offense is just offensive the way it is. They need to get weapons. They can't just rely on a great defense. It's awesome to have a great defense, and I think all the great teams have a great defense. But again, that's only half of the battle. They need to get the playmakers. They have a running back. He looks solid. He hurdled over a man on his way to the end zone. That was one of the best plays I saw all day. But still, they couldn't get anything done. That was their one big play. It was just a mess. Notre Dame needs to go back to the drawing board and seriously think about some of the stuff that got done. A bunch of other ranked teams also lost. And before I get into them specifically, they were all in the Big 12. That's not true. Even the ones that didn't win, that did win, were in the Big 12. Some teams that really were concerning. First of all, Kansas loses from the Big 12. They lose to Illinois. Illinois looked really solid. I wasn't expecting that out of them. I don't think a lot of people were. The rest of the Big 12, especially in that early slate, really struggled against some teams that they're clearly better than, which is why they ended up winning. Kansas State, which we talked about when we talked about Tulane. Tulane might be a bigger issue, but Oklahoma State played ugly, ugly football against Arkansas, a team they were down multiple scores to, a team where their quarterback, Taylon Green of Arkansas, I mean, just the whole game was ugly, really. He threw a pick six. It was awful pick six. That got them back into the game. Ollie Gordon couldn't get anything going against an Arkansas defense that is not that good, honestly. Many mistakes on both sides of the ball there. It was just kind of an ugly game. The whole Big 12 kind of looked bad last week. The whole conference takes a bit of a step down. It's just a mess. It really is. It's just ugly football. That double overtime game between Oklahoma State and Arkansas is maybe it was the tightest game of the week, but it was just ugly to watch. Michigan. We're talking about losers. We can't miss out on Michigan. The Michigan offense in particular. I mean, look, Texas is a great team. And I don't want to sit here and say, hey, I expected I don't want to sit here and say, Michigan, you're done, because Texas is the second best team in the nation, arguably the best team in the nation. Talk about Georgia there. But that offense couldn't get anything done against Fresno State. They especially couldn't get anything done against Texas. The defense looked fine. Like, Texas was moving the ball up and down, but they made a couple of stops in the red zone. They turned the ball over once or twice. And if the offense was able to even be half of what it was last season, this could have been a game. Or at least it wouldn't have been a blowout. This could have been a game that I'm talking about, hey, Michigan showed some sparks. But no, Michigan was sparkless. Their offense, their players, their best player, Loveland, their tight end, dropped the ball. Just no defense, caught the ball, fumbled it with no interference from anyone at least once, maybe more times. I know he fumbled multiple times. The passing attack is going nowhere. And when you can key in on the run, you know the run is their main offense. It's just not going to work. Sharon Moore is not the answer at head coach. Again, I keep talking about these huge disappointments. It's only week 2. Maybe they can turn the season around, but I am ready to fire a lot of these coaches. Marcus Freeman, Coach Prime, Sharon Moore. Some of these guys are heavy on the hot seat. It's boiling with where they are sitting. And it's just, I won't even say a little bit, it's a lot concerning. I kept Michigan in the rankings. Again, we'll talk about that tomorrow. But I'm on the fence about him. I didn't want to punish him too harshly for going against a great team like Texas. Continuing, Oregon. The Oregon Ducks are a team I was really high on. The Oregon Ducks looked really bad against Idaho, only winning by 10 points. And then they escape with their lives against what I think is a really good Boise State team. Obviously, we talked about Ashton Jeanty and the Boise State Broncos last segment, but that Oregon team is just as concerning as Boise State is appealing, right? You talk about this team that, again, they put up the stats. The offense is putting up the numbers. The defense is very concerning. The defense letting Ashton Jeanty run wild on them, 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. Maybe that's unavoidable at this point, but you have to go off the assumption that you can, if you are a championship caliber team, you can stop anyone from rushing for 200 yards on you. And I think that kind of has to be a prerequisite for being a championship level defense. Boise State was able to move the ball up and down the field. They were able to get clutch drives. Oregon barely escapes with a victory. Their offensive line is abysmal. Oh my God, they cannot run the ball. They cannot get too much. They have no protection for their quarterback back there. It is a mess. It is super concerning for Oregon. Now, they're a top 10 team. They're still a very good team. They're still 2-0. Good teams find a way to win. As much as I'm kind of dogging on Kansas State, on Oklahoma State, on Oregon, they found a way to win. Good teams find a way to win. But it's so concerning watching these teams play. if they go up against an Ohio State in the playoffs, if they go up against a Georgia, against a Texas in the playoffs, against a Miami, what are these teams going to do against a team that's firing on all cylinders? They can't afford to make these mistakes. That's how you lose games, and it's just not a good look for these teams. And the last one I want to talk about, and I won't put them in as a full loser, just a half loser, because I kind of feel bad for them. Utah, we were talking about Cam Rising looking so good last week. 5 touchdowns, leading them to a huge victory. And then he gets hurt again. Cam Rising, leading Utah to a huge victory over Baylor, hurts his hand. I don't know how long he's out for, but that Utah team is reverting back to last season. A Utah team with a great defense, but no offense to speak of. Much like Iowa, who also who lost last week to Iowa State. Iowa State, big winner. But having no offense is just like when we talked about Oregon. You need that defense. You need both sides of the ball. Cam Rising, when he's there, this Utah team is a championship contender, and I fully believe that. This Utah defense is good enough to win a championship, and with a quarterback like Cam Rising, their offense is good enough as well. We've seen it. We've seen them be in position to make even the 4-team playoff when he's there, just losing a couple of close games at the end. They were absolutely 12-team playoff contenders with Cam Rising. But without him, we see what happens. They almost lose to a hapless Baylor team, only able to put up 23 points total. Most of that came with Cam Rising on the field. Hopefully it's not too bad, but they need to find a backup plan for when Cam Rising is hurt, because he has shown inability to stay on the football field, which is just a shame because he is a very, very good quarterback, and this Utah team is very, very good when he is playing. But anyway, let me know who your biggest losers were for college football week 2. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we are going to preview Monday Night Football, a massive matchup with huge implications, not just for the rest of the year, but also for fantasy, between the New York Jets and the San Francisco 49ers taking place tonight. We'll talk about that when we come back on the other side of the break. Stick around. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.